right, folks. Thanks for coming tonight. I hope to share with you some things that are really exciting for us at the Medicine Center, and I'm excited to let you know that we have someone here who's going to share her story tonight of her journey with LDN. So I'm excited to have her share with you all. So we'll get going here. My name is Brad White. I'm the pharmacist, one of the pharmacists at the Medicine Center down the street, and we're going to talk tonight about Low-Dose Naltrexone and really the amazing wave of information that is going on right now in the scientific literature and the industry. One of the neat things about being able to share information is in the pharmacy we end up being in a position anymore where we kind of do a lot of triaging. So people come in and they're like, can you look at this growth on my leg? You know, can you tell me what to do about it? Or it can be, help me pick a Medicare plan. It can be a little bit of anything. So the hardest thing is when somebody comes in and they're in pain, they're miserable, they have neuropathy, they can't take care of their kids, they can't go to work. So this is a subject that has been a very interesting labor of love the past couple years, but just recently it's just amazing how much info we have that we can share with you. So the Medicine Center was started 43 years ago by my father in Canton, Ohio. We've been down the street here in New Philadelphia since 1995-ish, since we've owned it. Brittany and Janice are two of my wonderful pharmacists that are here, also learning, sharing, and helping. So we really are trying to be invested in the community to help share some of these cool developments that are happening. So if you've never heard of low-dose naltrexone, naltrexone itself was a drug that was approved by the FDA in 1984. It's a medication that originally was used for heroin or alcohol addiction. I don't want that to scare you because there's a lot of drugs that are designed for one purpose and end up being used for another. I guess I have a room full of women, but Viagra is probably the best example because that was originally designed for hypotension, and they found out that it caused some other side effects. So things like that happen all the time. So there were a lot of studies on its benefits for alcoholism. It worked very well. There's been a couple advancements to the medication in the last couple years. Vivitrol is an injection that they've used in the institutional facilities like the jails and those facilities to help patients get off heroin and alcohol. There's even a drug out that doesn't get used a whole lot, but it's called Contrave. In 2005 it was designed and released. It's actually generic Wellbutrin, which is an SSRI, which is often used for depression, but it's combined with a low-dose naltrexone for weight loss. So low-dose naltrexone has a lot of different uses, so it's really interesting. So that's kind of a neat way to legitimize it. And there's some FDA studies going on now for autism for an orphan drug. And what an orphan drug is the government gives special permission for a manufacturer to produce a medication in very small amounts, usually for very large prices, for certain indications. So if nothing else, hopefully they'll have some good data to share soon. So the reason we're kind of here tonight is because a doctor out on the East Coast back in 1985 who was invested in working in addiction treatment clinics heard about naltrexone 50 milligram when it came out and wanted to treat his patients to see how it would work. When he first started using the medication, he was fascinated to see that most of his patients couldn't tolerate it because of the side effect profile, anxiety, nausea, vivid dreams, sleeplessness, some other things along that area. But the interesting thing he saw for the patients that did stick with it, they had an endorphin level which increased by over 300%. And one of the things that he did is he treated patients with HIV. Back in the 80s, we had the big resurgence and this exposure of HIV and AIDS. And those patients with that chronic condition often only had 20% of the normal endorphin level that you and I do that are healthier. Endorphins are the body's morphine, if you will. So you've had an endorphin rush if you've been driving down the street and someone pulls out in front of you and you immediately are alert like you're wanting to probably say something that you shouldn't say. But that endorphin rush is what is kind of like the fight or flight reflex that we have as humans. Originally to run from the bear back in the old days, but now it's one of those things that your body uses to not only help you get through stressful times, but it also can help you when you're trying to heal disease. So he was really fascinated and wondered, well, if my patients can't tolerate naltrexone at 50 milligrams, actually the dose can go from 50 to 200 milligrams. So he's like, if they can't tolerate it there, but their endorphin levels went up, maybe I can use a lower dose. So he had a little science project, and he treated patients he started with 5 milligrams and then went down to 4, 3, 2, and 1, and found that even with 1% of the normal dose, so at that time he was just using 1 milligram, he got patients that were HIV compromised to get a boost of 300% of their endorphin levels. And they felt better, and all of a sudden he was having patients that had 90 days to live 3 and 4 years. So it was really interesting, and some of his colleagues at Harvard said, what are you doing? He's like the only guy in the country that had this great success in helping these patients that were at this chronic end-of-life stage. So that was kind of the beginning of a lot of really smart people asking questions. So the first landmark article that we had was out of Penn State in 2007 on Crohn's disease. There was a really good article out of Stanford Medical School on fibromyalgia in 2009. And right around 2009, we only really had 230 published studies in PubMed. And PubMed's like the Google for scientific articles, okay? So now, just last night when I looked, there's over 1,300 published studies over 167 disease states for LDN use in autoimmune and different inflammatory diseases. So what I want to share with you guys tonight is a little bit of how we got here. So you got a lot of doctors asking why. One of them was Pradeep Chopra. He is now the head of pain management at Brown Medical School. And his mission was to figure out, why does this work? There's a lot of medications that are used now. They don't know why they work. You know, there's some things that you'll read the little package insert if you can get your magnifying glass out and see that mechanism unknown, but it helps condition A, condition B. So Dr. Chopra dug in and decided that based on their studies, one of the reasons they feel low-dose naltrexone can work in patients with autoimmune conditions or for pain can be because of that endorphin rush. The other thing is I'll say some fancy words and I don't want you to get hung up on them, but it also has an effect on the toll-like receptors. The toll-like receptors are these receptors in your immune system that tell your body that you have an infection and cause inflammation with the goal of trying to help your body heal itself. So what you have going on is your body's saying there's a foreign substance, inflame, 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 and so all these things get released, like all these cytokines, and that causes inflammation in addition to your infection, and it's supposed to help the body control the infection. The best example I can give you is rheumatoid arthritis. So rheumatoid arthritis, you know, you get those stiff joints. That's literally an inflammation. That's your body's immune system attacking the joints. So Dr. Chopra is a pretty neat guy. He's kind of he's one of the guys that in the industry that people really like to look forward to based on some of the things that come out of Brown, because they are one of the destinations in the U.S. for pain management. So I've kind of touched a little bit on how we got here. I was first exposed to LDN at a conference that we work with one of our compounding facilities. So we're a member of PCCA, which is Professional Compounding Centers of America, and I was lucky enough to go to a seminar where a pharmacist was talking about how they had shared information with their patients. And they had this neat guy come in from Yale who did this research, and he gathered all these articles together and how they were helping patients with this. It turns out that we're going to talk about her a little bit, but there is a lady in the UK named Linda Ellisgood, and she's actually been the driving force in LDN education in the world. So the reason I'm here really is because of her, and I hope that if nothing else, maybe if you haven't heard of her, I would suggest you check her out. We have her book back there that we're happy to sell you tonight at our cost if you want to learn more, but it's really awesome. But there's a national conference. So if you're kind of wondering why did I have to come to a hotel room in New Philadelphia on a Thursday night to hear Brad talk about LDN and my doctor's not telling me? There's two reasons. One, the patent for this medicine expired over 30 years ago, and no drug company can repatent it and make money on it. So that's the brute honest part. And the other thing is that it's one of those things that if the doctor hasn't heard us talk about it or heard you share it with them or been to this conference, they probably don't know about it. Maybe they have a friend that they've been to a conference that's talked about it, but it's kind of, you don't know about it unless you come into contact with it. They don't have any drug reps going in to tell them about low-dose naltrexone. So I've been lucky enough to align myself with a group of a bunch of pharmacists in the US and this Yale researcher who's gathered a whole bunch of data for a whole bunch of patients that the pharmacies have. So this was his study he did with 1,000 patients. He did it about 2 years ago, and he just gave them a self-survey and asked them to kind of give feedback on where they've been and what happened. So at that time, it was about an 83% female to male ratio. Their dosages were very basic. They were between 0.5 milligram, 1.5 milligram, and 4.5 milligram. And this is kind of like one of the original dosing schedules that was being used. Now we have 23 different doses over 15 different dosing schedules, depending on the condition, whether it be for mental health or for arthritis, or it be for fibromyalgia, or weight loss. So there's been a lot of neat trial and error that's been done. Main side effects they reported, 87% reported none, which is pretty cool. 12% reported insomnia, 9% had vivid dreams, and 3% reported headache. And this is all self-reported numbers, so this isn't statistically maybe significant, but 1,000 people in these numbers is a pretty good chunk of data. My favorite story is a patient who was, I don't know if it was just their sense of humor, but they felt that their life had been pretty boring, so they were looking forward to some vivid dreams. But whether or not that's, how it went or not, but generally their symptoms they reported went away within 4 days on average. Doesn't sound like very many, but even if it went on a week or two, that's really not too bad. So based on the conditions that they were being treated for was the real eye-opener. It wasn't just fibromyalgia, it wasn't just pain, it was all these different 48 conditions. And it was interesting to see what the prescribers that they were working with were using or attempting to treat their patient with. So anything from Crohn's to rheumatoid to Hashimoto's, depression, psoriasis. I have some very interesting psoriasis pictures for you later, which are unbelievable. So it isn't just, we had some innovative prescribers here, so it was really neat to see that. So overall, the patients in this that participated reported an 84% success rate. 84% is pretty good odds. That's a good strong B in any high school class. So it doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody, but you want to play the odds with low risk and low side effect profile? Not too bad. So I've got a number of different testimonials in your binder that the patients that participated in this study gave us all permission to share. There's a bunch of different things about before taking LDN that maybe some of you or some of your loved ones might identify with. Everything from having chronic flare-ups to losing jobs. Some of these are just unbelievable. If you look, we'll look at this one on the bottom. I lived in chronic pain on a daily basis. I wasn't able to work at times, on the couch for days. I was on the couch for days at a time due to pain, fatigue, and weakness. I was given several different medications to try to reduce the pain. It didn't work for me. I was on 900 milligrams of gabapentin 3 times a day. I got enough wows to know that you guys know what that drug is, and that is a lot, and her poor stomach, okay? She couldn't flex her thumb or hold a pencil. She was a secretary. She lost her job. We'll come back to her. So after taking LDN, there's some exciting testimonials. Almost no pain, skin resolving, my shoulders don't hurt, sleeping better. Here's our girl. Second from the top in the blue. My psoriasis is 95% improved. I can flex my thumb, hold a pencil. It's not as noticed by the public. I was able to walk my children to school, and I have so much energy, I am able to discontinue the gabapentin. I'm attending college this fall. So the really cool thing is she graduated from college, has a new job, and has a completely different outlook on life. So hers are the pictures we'll see in a little bit that are pretty cool. So one person and I already talked about our healthcare system before we got started tonight, and being a community pharmacy, we try to look at things a little different because we have to. If you've read anything in the newspaper lately, you know that basically healthcare is under assault by a lot of different angles, and pharmacy is no different. One of the things that's really nice, and I'm sure Brittany and Janice would agree, that we have the luxury of often getting a phone call from a provider, and they're like, look, I have a patient that has a problem. How can you help me treat them? They can't swallow, they're on hospice. Or the kid, we have a child that was born premature, they weigh 6 pounds, and they have a heart condition. What do we do? So one of the neat things is we like to talk about our triad. So it's physician, pharmacist, patient, and we try to all work together to find a solution. We kind of have modified this, and I need to make a new graphic. But with my Yale buddy, David Giesel, we kind of have physician, pharmacist, researcher, and then the patient's in the middle. If anybody works in healthcare or reads anything, all the information now is like drinking from a fire hose. So there's so much stuff, it's so hard to keep up for. So now we've got this guy on our team that does nothing but comb research articles and help share new data with us so that we can try to make sure we're on top of our game and share it with you, the patient, and the provider. So our goal is to try to see if we can't do a better job to educate providers that often look to LDN for this solution. These are different practitioners that have been using LDN in their field. We are very, very unlucky in Northeast Ohio not to have really any integrative, very few functional, and 0 naturopathic medicine doctors. But we have a lot of family practice, we have a lot of mental health doctors, we have some doctors that treat chronic pain. We're having discussions trying to raise awareness. And I guess if you have an interest tonight, we would encourage you to talk to your provider, and we'd be happy to help you do that, because there's no reason that you should, in theory, have to change doctors. Provider education was also a question I had earlier. This is the second in a series of what I intend to be a year-long attempt to continue to educate the public. We're going to have a provider seminar next month, and I plan on basically inviting half of Northeast Ohio, so we'll see how many come. But it should be really interesting because I have been able to go into offices and they're like, I know LDN, I understand it, I have patients that use it and love it. I go into other offices and they're like, yeah, I tried that, but it didn't work so well, so I don't use it anymore. Those are the ones we need to talk to, because those doctors maybe just put patients on one strength, one dose, and let it run. And when you do that, you only get 40 to 50% success rate. So we'll talk in a couple minutes about how you might have a dose that might differ based on your body chemistry or your condition, and it's something that it needs to be titrated. So titrated is a way where you start low and go slow, and you watch your symptoms, and then you find out where you fall based on your level. So I got a number of different pieces. One of the pieces I've had a physician recently tell me, he's got these laying out in his waiting room up at Mercy Hospital. He said, I only get 12 minutes a patient. I don't have time to spend 25 minutes, tell them about LDN, what it is, how it works, and why we're going to use it. I give them your paper, they read it, it helps them understand, and then I can send them to the seminar if they need more information, or they can call us at the pharmacy. But it basically highlights 4 really high quality studies to help patients understand that this isn't voodoo. I can't promise magic, but we're basically leveraging the research and some patient feedback. We also have a nice template. It's in your binder on the left-hand side. It's behind that color document. This document is one of several conglomerations of suggested ways to start LDN depending on the condition you're trying to treat. So this is important for a couple reasons. If I can get the provider who thinks that it's 4.5 milligrams or nothing, this might hopefully make him or her think different about how to use LDN. And the reason is if you have have a Hashimoto's type condition and they give you 4.5 milligram to start, it's probably going to fail. So there's different conditions that have really good data to show where their numbers need to fall. The general beliefs thought based on that 1,000 study group that I showed you earlier is that most fibromyalgia patients fall between 1 and 3.5 milligrams per day depending on their dose. If your dose was written at 4.5 milligram, you probably blew past your symptom maximization and you may not benefit. You might benefit some, but so that's the goal by this order. This doesn't even begin to compartmentalize or try to address chronic pain patients. So we've got other protocols that we can use for chronic pain. Other educational opportunities, there are some incredible resources online. The LDN book, which I see shaking heads, many of you know about Linda and her movement. This book is really awesome. It's easy to read. It's got a chapter on a number of different conditions. And if you ever feel like you don't know how to talk to your doctor to get them to kind of see your point of view, there's even a chapter in this book to teach you how to talk to your doctor and try to share information with them that they're reluctant on. So it's really neat. There's a new version of this in the works right now. I think it's supposed to be published the end of this year, but there'll be a new one coming. And I had the chance to meet Linda this year in Chicago, and she's a super lady. So it was really neat. She's part of the LDN Research Trust, which I failed to mention. One of the things that they've developed and have been pushing out is a free app that you can have on your smartphone. And this is really cool, especially if you're trying to treat chronic pain, because you can track your titration and your symptoms so that if you notice that maybe when you bump up your dose, when you stop feeling better or you regress, if you will, it can help you identify maybe your pinpoint where your dose would be. So this is pretty cool. Provider education list. So this is like next couple slides I'm going to run through to try to not spend too much time on it, but all the little things that fly in red are things that our group has had experience treating patients with LDN. Crohn's, CRPS. CRPS is an extremely painful nerve condition. If you think about even just having your clothing touch your skin is absolutely off the charts painful for these people. Haley disease is a disease where you have very unusual blistering over different parts of the body. Psoriasis we've talked about, but just basically the common theme in many of these conditions are they either have an autoimmune component or they have an inflammation component. And when you think about fibromyalgia and rheumatoid arthritis and Crohn's or IBS, they all have some inflammatory component. There's even data to suggest cancer benefits, and I've got some studies in here that we can look on that also. MS, PANDAS, Parkinson's, restless leg. You don't have to take some prescription drug that costs $12 a pill for restless leg, okay? If you haven't tried magnesium first, try magnesium. We can help you find the right magnesium, but this might be an option. So you don't need Requip, excuse me. But anyway. So a number of different things, anxiety, depression. So I'll just run through the rest of these. But all these are in your binder. I failed to tell you before now. I hope you're not frantically making notes because there's a whole bunch of stuff in your binder and it was intended to give you everything so that it wasn't a problem. So this was the first Crohn's article out of Penn State Medical School, talking about LDN and the success with patients. Sometimes you get doctors that say, oh, it's just anecdotal evidence. It worked in one patient, you can't prove it worked in others. Well, here's a colonoscopy for someone that was on LDN for 12 weeks. They'd been on other traditional methods for a period of like 8 years and had no benefit. And after 8 weeks on the right, they're looking pretty clear. Just what you wanted to see, a picture of the bowel bed, right? Ulcerative colitis, same thing. Refractory to all treatments, 12 weeks, LDN, nice and clear. Fibromyalgia article out of Stanford. This I mentioned earlier. This was the study that they started everybody at 4.5 milligrams, and they got about 54% benefit on patients. But if you titrate it, we can help better. Chronic pain from Dr. Chopra out of Brown. We talked about him. CRPS. We talked about that a little bit just a minute ago. Multiple sclerosis. 3.5 weeks ago, there was an article or a video on NBC News that talked about brain inflammation could be the key to Alzheimer's therapy. I don't know if LDN's a key there, but it helps with inflammation. Maybe that's something to think about for those patients. I'm not sure. Cancer. This is bizarre. Okay, so this cancer article talks about 3 patients who had terminal pancreatic cancer that metastasized to their liver. Bad. Okay, these patients had like 90 days to live. On LDN therapy, they extended their lifespan from 39 to 72 months. So there's PET scans in here that shows that there was no disease in their liver when they took the pictures. So I don't think the doctor's going to be able to say PET scans lie. Okay, so it's just, the data is amazing, and it may not be the holy grail, but it's very exciting. So psoriasis, we mentioned our girl that who was a secretary and lost her job because of her hand. There's her hand. I think the picture in your book actually looks a little more graphic. I hope your kids are okay. Sorry, don't look at that. But you right-handed, couldn't hold a pen, couldn't type. So she went to her dermatologist, brought her Linda's book and an article on psoriasis, and the dermatologist refused to do it. She got mad, found an integrative doctor who actually was Harvard trained, and they're like, okay, we'll try it. There's low side effect profile, low cost, not a lot to lose, why not? So 3 months later, so this picture hangs in the doctor's office at that physician in Wisconsin. Since then, the patient went back to the doctor and said, you know what? I respect the fact you didn't want to try this, but you need to be aware of it, and here's what happened, and the guy couldn't believe it. And he actually was open enough to talk to my friend up in Madison and say, look, what are you guys doing? And now he is starting to use it in some psoriasis patients in his practice. So another person here earlier mentioned it takes so long to get data to increase our providers' knowledge. I read an article last week that said on average from a new discovery in medicine, it takes 17 years for it to hit mainstream medicine. And if you think of insurance approvals and all of the studies and everything I think is done with good intent, but man, it takes a long time sometimes. Finishing up here on this so that we can hear about Charlotte's story. Mental health has really been something that of late has also gotten a lot of attention. Apparently Lev Weinsberg and Schuchman out of Harvard are like the rock stars for mental health research in the US. And they are working with the NFL and the Army and a number of different organizations to do tests right now on different patients with depression and PTSD and different mental health conditions. Because if you think about it, if you suffer from something like fibromyalgia, or you have a rheumatoid arthritis, or a psoriasis that makes you lose your job, you're dealing with the disease symptoms, but you're probably feeling pretty down and low because you can't do what you want to do. You've lost that quality of life. So you've got a number of different things going on. And there's a benefit possibly for patients with LDN based on how it works on those toll-like receptors with that inflammation in the neurons. So that's pretty exciting too. Lots of different things going on. So I appreciate you guys coming to listen tonight. I hope that in all that stuff, you got a little bit of pearls. We're gonna do this once a month, ongoing. I've got sheets in your binder and some on the table. So if you have a friend or a support group or a family member that you would like to hear my message, they can call us at the pharmacy, but they can also, hopefully they can come in November. And I'm looking to do some stuff up in Canton in the new year, so we're going to rotate around. Our compounding pharmacy's down here in New Philly, so that's why we're close to here for these couple. But we can do a lot of different things to help people. Recent report, 20% of the population has an autoimmune or a chronic pain on a daily basis. seems like a lot of people. So, I mean, you know, we all go out and overdo it in the yard. We're gonna be raking leaves soon and chopping wood or something, but man, that's a lot of people to deal with on a daily basis. And we've even seen some LDN use in pets. So that's something, there's actually some studies being done down at a vet school in North Carolina for tumors in dogs. So a lot of different things going on there. So that's kind of the exciting thing, and it really is a wave. I don't want to fall off the wave because we want to keep learning and sharing information. And to share information, we have the luxury of having Charlotte here tonight, who is going to share her story with LDN, and I'm really excited to hear it.
Yay, thank you. And thank you so much for doing this, because one thing I first said when I came in was, you know, are you talking with providers? Because on my quest for just to feel normal, I've done so much research, and luckily I had a doctor who was willing to listen, but there's so many doctors who aren't. So I want to give you a little background about me, because I think that'll help you understand my journey. So I'm actually a wellness strategist by trade for an insurance company. So I see claims all the time on autoimmunity, chronic pain, and I help to implement wellness programs, holistic wellness programs, to help to combat some of those issues. But I've been into wellness for the last 15 years, and I never thought I would be someone to take a medication. I actually was like, that will never be me. After I had my daughter, and my family has been really affected by my autoimmunity, I started to kind of not feel well. And for someone who eats healthy, exercises, at that time avoided gluten and dairy, I was like, why me? What's happening to me? I started breaking out in rashes and feeling really tired. My husband was active duty Army, so I was basically a single parent, working full time, raising 2 children. So my doctor said, you know, here's some Zyrtec, of course you're tired, you have 2 children, your husband's deployed all the time, of course you're tired, here's some allergy medicine for your rash, and I wouldn't accept it. But it took nearly 3 years to get a diagnosis of Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And so when I got diagnosed, I said, my doctor put me on a natural desiccated thyroid hormone, and I started my journey with the medicine center, but I still didn't feel well. And I was just shuffling through life. My husband hadn't joined me here in Ohio yet, so I was still kind of a single parent, working full time, now in graduate school, and taking care of 2 children on my own. So I was doing as much as I could to find my wellness journey. Once again, still dairy, gluten-free, exercised regularly, ate a whole food diet. But my doctor mentioned LDN, actually. He's the one who brought it up to me. And I'm on a lot of support groups for Hashimoto's, so and I had heard that come up, but I was like, not another medication, no way. Can't do another medication, already on the thyroid medication. But then some new symptoms started coming on, debilitating fatigue. I'm talking, get home from work and lay flat in my bed and tell my children to get the hummus out of the refrigerator. Here's a turkey roll up, I can't move. I mean, that's what it really, sleeping 12 hours and falling asleep on my way to work in Canton. I had a 55-minute drive, I live in Jenny and Hutton, and I was literally with my children in the car nodding off. And so we went back to my doctor and I said, I want to talk about this drug. And so I did my own research prior to meeting with him. And what I learned was it's antagonist, so it works with your body. I've heard it referred to much like ginseng. So I was like, that's natural, right? So I started on a 1.5 milligram dose for 3 months. He did a 3-month titrate, if you will. And I had a complete resolution of the fatigue. My brain fog lifted. I don't even know how I made it through school that year and how people at work took me seriously, because I couldn't connect dots. People would say things to me and I wouldn't even remember what they said. Like talking with when my daughter was 3 at the time, use your words, I couldn't find my words. And I just, all of a sudden, within 2 weeks, I was feeling so much energy. I was sleeping not 12 hours a night, but 7.5 hours a night. I realized I'm not antisocial. I really do like people. I was like, yeah, let's go to that party. But before, every little task felt so overwhelming. I just felt like, I can't go do that. I'm so overwhelmed. I mean, my anxiety was through the roof. I didn't know at the time that's what it was, but that's what it really was. Lisa was big, so I joined the LDN Trust Facebook page, and I actually interviewed with her, so you can actually see my interview with her through that page, and because it really did change my life. I have since, still on thyroid hormones, and I've since changed from a natural desiccated thyroid hormone to the synthetic version of T4 and T3. It just was too much change for me because the thyroid hormone they kept changing the formulas on me, and I kept having new symptoms. But the one thing that remains constant is LDN, and I hope to one day only be on that if I have to be on anything. So for me, it was huge. I say finding support, those support groups, because early on in my journey, I started to feel bad again, and I just reached out on Facebook, and someone said, skip a dose, you might need to clear your receptors, and I had a complete resolution of those symptoms the next day. I mean, that's how fast it worked for me. Not everyone has success, so on those groups, some people just don't have the success, but as Brad said, it's worth the try for the success rate. I also had gained 14 pounds because I had tried diet. I tried the autoimmune paleo diet before LDN, and I actually gained weight on that diet. Most people lose weight. And I got a new symptom of joint pain when I reintroduced nightshades. And so I would have to wear braces at night. And a year and a half into LDN, I don't have to do that anymore. But extreme stress mixed with a tomato will cause my joints to hurt still. So it doesn't cure everything for me. But I know my body enough to know, that like the other day I was really stressed out at work, and I was like, oh no, here it goes. Because I had some nightshades at work or at lunch. But overall, it literally changed my life. My husband's a farmer now, and I can help on the farm. I can play with my kids, and I just feel like it's worth a try.
Awesome. And I do like what you said about it wasn't just LDN.
Right.
You worked hard, the whole package. So It's not a magic bullet. Okay.
Right.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'm going to touch a little bit, as promised, on CBD. CBD has been something that it's been an interesting experience from a pharmacist's perspective in Ohio. As some of you may or may not know, we've only been allowed to sell CBD in Ohio legally for about, August 1st, 2nd, something like that. Some of the video stores had it, some of the health food stores had it. Let's talk about what CBD is and what CBD isn't, okay? CBD isn't marijuana. It's not the stuff that comes from the dispensaries. There are marijuana state-approved dispensaries in the state of Ohio that I still don't understand why your pharmacist isn't your resource for that, but apparently if you see a provider and they feel you could benefit from medical marijuana, that's great. You have to go to a special place to buy it, and there's all kinds of different things that you can do with that. That is also the cannabis plant, but it has high THC, and THC is the psychoactive compound, okay? So if you think of people smoking marijuana and getting high and being hungry and loopy, that's the marijuana THC high level. CBD also comes from the hemp plant, but it's a different type of cannabis. It's actually a farmed hemp. It is very low in THC. What you can buy legally in the state of Ohio without a prescription is 0.3% THC or less. Generally what we're finding based on our research is you're better off with a full spectrum product. So if you think of, I don't know if this will help anyone, but years ago there were a lot of articles on vitamin E. And do you take vitamin E, the whole vitamin, or you just take alpha tocopherol or alpha and beta tocopherol? So CBD full spectrum is like the whole plant extract, okay, versus an isolate. So if you walk into the gas station and you see CBD for $5 or $10, it's probably the isolate, which is just one single extract of CBD. Potentially the benefits may help, but odds are it probably won't, okay? So what we're finding in our journey is that there's a number of different things to look for. You want to look for a product that's organic, because if anybody's ever fished, or if you know catfish, catfish are bottom feeders. The hemp plant is the bottom feeder of the landscape. It sucks up all kinds of things from the environment. So it could be heavy metals, it could be pesticides, it could be pollutants in the air. So you want to make sure that it's organically grown and tested so you're not getting stuff in that plant extract, because once you get arsenic into a hemp oil, you're not getting it out because it's oil soluble, if you will. You can't separate it easily. You want to make sure, or some people are really concerned about it being vegan and non-GMO, so if you're going to go whole hog and look for organic, non-GMO, independently tested, and generally right now, believe it or not, even though Colorado gets a bad rap for marijuana, Colorado is a really good place to grow CBD, because when you grow at high altitudes, 7,000 feet or above, you get more UV light, which gives you more stuff and more terpenes and more concentration in your hemp plant. And as a result, in theory, you get more benefits from the cannabinoids that are extracted from that. The interesting thing about why I paired LDN with CBD is because they are very complementary in a lot of ways. They don't work the same way, okay? CBD is something that works on a couple different receptors, and we can talk about that right here. Oh, that's right, I'm not on PowerPoint anymore. I had to slum it and go to Adobe. All right, so believe it or not, you've got the nervous system, you've got the cardiovascular system, you've got the lymph system. Apparently we have an endocannabinoid system too. And what this system is a series of receptors where there are what they term CB1 and CB2 receptors, and the different cannabinoids actually fit like a lock and key into these receptors and help generate different responses in your body. It generally has to do with neurotransmitters and different receptors, but the thing that's interesting is if you look at the entire CBD oil or CBD spectrum, there are a number of different receptors in different parts of the body. So you've got things in your muscles, you've got things in your joints, you've got things in your skin, in your brain. So there's a bunch of receptors in a lot of different areas. And I almost felt like when I was learning about this, I'm like, well, where's this been my whole pharmacological career? Because we didn't talk about this stuff. But there has been quite a bit of research done on these different receptors and how cannabinoids can actually work to help decrease inflammation and also help with different peripheral situations, depression, anxiety, neurological conditions like nerve pain or arthritis pain. So there's all these different receptors are in different areas. And the fascinating thing is, and this might be hard to see from where you're at, but apparently the big blue circle, the big blue quarter, CBD can actually have a number of different effects. You mentioned nightshade vegetables, how they can kind of set you off. Well, if you think of the properties that nightshade vegetables have, you've all, when you cut into your lemon and you squeeze the rind, you see the oil kind of spray in the air. All these different properties are embedded in these plants. So in this hemp plant that has high concentrations of cannabinoids, they can have an antibacterial effect, they can inhibit cancer cell growth, bone growth, they can help with seizures and convulsions. They claim there's evidence to show it could reduce blood sugar. We know it can reduce inflammation. It can help with small intestine contractions, nausea and vomiting, and relieve pain and anxiety, and some psoriasis. Everything else around the spectrum is kind of like those associated peripheral type effects that you get when you think of a kind of a whole, like an endogenous effect where you get a little bit of activity here and a little bit of activity here by other receptors that are sort of related, but the key doesn't go the whole way in the lock. So you get some benefit from different things. The people that I've talked to that are benefiting from CBD therapies, they're generally using now capsules or tinctures, and they're having trouble sleeping, they're having trouble with nerve pain, they're having trouble with arthritis pain. Those seem to be the big three things in people I'm talking with. It's not the only thing that CBD can be used for, but there's a lot of different things that a full spectrum CBD generally they feel can benefit. So it could be gastrointestinal, it could be neurological, it could be mood. Research is still out there. But the interesting thing about the CBD and how it works is it just seems to fit with these receptors that end up responding with these entourage type effects that help make sure that your body can cope with that stressor. So the neat thing about how the LDN works within boosting endorphins and calming down the inflammation on the cytokines, the LDN or the CBD can do the same type of things, but it doesn't do it by the same mechanism. So if anybody's ever been put on a blood pressure medication and then your doctor wants to add another one, they do it because they're working two different ways. So sometimes patients could take LDN and benefit from CBD or vice versa, just because they work different ways. So the company that we've been talking with, they leave all the terpenes that come out of the hemp plant in their product. So they are looking at the whole plant spectrum. Terpenes are what, if anybody uses essential oils, there's a lot of terpenes in essential oils when you think of lavender or sage or some of those different things, and they are what makes the property up of the plant. So a lot of times it's the aroma, it could be the flavor, it could be different characteristics of color. So it's a number of different things. A lot of big words you probably don't care about, but you know, the hemp plant has a number of different terpenes that are inherent to it, and the company we've been working with so far, it leaves all that stuff in there to give you that complete full spectrum experience. There are some companies that flavor their product because hemp has a distinctive taste. So if you try a tincture and you don't like the taste, that is the plant. Some people flavor it, you know, to each his own. Kind of depends on what you want. If you want that pure, no added stuff, then you gotta maybe acclimate yourself to that flavor if you want to stick with the tincture, or maybe you just look to go to the capsules. So this company we've been working with is Imbue Botanicals. I am excited to say that one of the founders will be here next month with us to present this part. He'll probably do a much better job than I am, because I'm learning, I'll be honest. But it's something that I'm excited about because with the way he is passionate about what they're doing, he's trying to make sure that we educate people on what's possible. And you know, anybody taking a prescription medication, it's important to make sure that you're not going to take something that's going to interact. There is some research to say that if you're taking a blood thinner, you might want to be careful with CBD, or at least an oral CBD product. You might want to stick with topical until you find out how it's going to affect you, so it doesn't mess up your blood levels. There's some other things that say that CBD is metabolized through a P450 system, which is the fancy way of saying your liver metabolizes it. So if you take anything that's metabolized by the liver, one example would be a statin drug. You might want to be aware of that so that your dose could be adjusted appropriately, or you are careful with what you do. So that's a couple examples. There's a lot of discussion on how the CBD is isolated. This particular company does an ethanol extraction at 20 degrees below zero. Some companies do a carbon dioxide extraction. So there's pros and cons by each camp that say which is better. I kind of like the theory that if you're not using heat, you're probably not damaging some of the sustenance that's coming out of there. So that's why I'm kind of partial to their cold press method. So that's something to think about. So they've got, to give you a breakdown of what's out there, they make tinctures. That's probably the first thing that anybody might become aware of. Tinctures are great for customizing doses. Taken orally, they generally last 2 to 4 hours, depending on how much you dose. So that's something that can be flexible. You're not going to get any psychoactive effects if you use a tincture or a capsule or any of these CBD products. Full disclosure though, since I have my compliance officer in the room here, I am told, I have no proof, but there's a possibility that if you use enough CBD long enough, you could show up on a drug screen. So we're being told in the state of Ohio that there are new tests coming to basically determine if you smoked marijuana over the weekend and had a whole bunch of THC, or you've used a low-level CBD product long term. But it's something to be aware of if it's an issue at work. But you're not going to get high on CBD. So tinctures I mentioned. Tincture is great for sleep, maybe a little bit of anxiety. Patients that are dealing with more chronic issues, neuropathies, arthritis, psoriasis, might want to look at a capsule product because you're going to get a longer duration of action from a capsule. You're not going to have that flavor that you might not like with the tincture. And it's something that actually you can combine with a topical also. So if you're suffering from arthritis in your knee and it's chronic rheumatoid arthritis that you always have, you could start with a capsule and use a little bit of topical salve and get a faster response. And then as you progress throughout the month, you could probably back down your dose on the capsules and maybe either eliminate the salve or just use it on days you have flare-ups. So what I'm seeing with CBD is that you start low and titrate up, but then depending on your condition, if it's more chronic, you might want to start a little higher on the capsule and then back down once you get kind of some relief. So there's a number of different strengths. Generally what they do on tinctures is they base it by volume. So for example, they'll tell you 100 milligrams of the Imbue Vitality in the middle means there's 100 milligrams of CBD in that whole 1 ounce bottle. Or there's 250 milligrams in that 1 fluid ounce bottle. So they're more concentrated. Sometimes you gotta watch on how companies label things. I like how they do it because it's very simple. It's 100, 250, or 500. And they make it, or 40, 100, 250, 500. So you can choose how strong you want to go, and it's easy to kind of adjust your dose. It's in the dropper, so you can do a couple drops, or you can do half a dropper full or a full dropper full, and that way you're able to customize based on what you want to do. The capsules are similar. They come in 5, 10, and 25 milligram capsules. Worked with a patient last week. I don't really know how it came out yet, but one of my colleagues in New Jersey has used this company for about 3 years, and that's one of the reasons that we chose them. He has a patient with chronic lower back pain that uses 25 milligram capsules a day, and they started out taking 2 a day. They took it for a month and then back down to 1 a day, and when they have flare-ups, they use the topical salve. So it was kind of neat to see how they combine more than one modality to do that. There's also some hand lotions. Believe it or not, CBD is great for like moisturizing your skin. So with winter coming, if you're someone who's prone to getting cold sores, cracked lips, I don't know about you guys, but my thumbs, when we wash our hands 100 times a day in the pharmacy, always get yucky. It's really good for hydration and reinforcing of your skin integrity. And they make some lip balms too. One of the neat things is there's some massage oils, but pets. A lot of questions about pets at the pharmacy. Dogs that are scared of thunder and lightning storms. Dogs with a lot of anxiety when the mailman comes to the door. So believe it or not, we know that anxiety can be a factor, and they make special formulations for dogs, cats, and horses. So if you've got a horse at home on the farm, might be an option. So I'll admit I don't know a lot about the pet side, but I have some tools that we can find the answer together. So overall, I guess I don't know if LDN is your answer. I don't know if CBD is your answer. I hope that if nothing else, we made you think about some questions to either ask us or ask your provider, or giving you some tools in your binder to think about. In retrospect, I did a really poor job of giving you data on CBD, so I apologize. I got some brochures from the company if you want. You're welcome to have. I brought some of their products if you're interested in looking at them. I also failed to mention on the back counter there when everybody walked in, there was an amazing story on NPR a week and a half ago that talks about LDN. I mean, I didn't need to have you come tonight because it was that good. But it talked with some of the leaders. It referenced the author of an article out of Dartmouth Medical School that is in your binder under tab 3. And if you have any doubt whatsoever that your provider will want data to learn more, take the binder to them, show them tab 3, and have them look at that article. It's a summary that reviewed 900 different studies on LDN, and it picked the best 75, and it goes right down the list. Crohn's, IBS, fibromyalgia, chronic pain, multiple sclerosis. I mean, it's excellent. But it was one of the stories like Charlotte shared where, you know, this poor person was miserable, had been to 3 or 4 different doctors over 5 different years and taken 10 different medications, and finally found something to help her. So there's copies of those on the back counter you're welcome to take. I meant to stick it in your binder and time got short on me today, but really good article. So, questions? Yes, ma'am.
Several. Any studies on ADHD combined with obstructional defiance disorder?
ADHD, yes.
Yes.
What was the second part?
Oppositional defiance disorder. It's
Okay.
a lot of children.
I could do some looking for you. Okay.
But I have a grandson that's taking Adderall,
Okay.
and that just makes me nervous.
I can understand that. I guess, you know, there's a time and a place for those medications, okay?
Do specialized pediatric, he does see a psychiatrist who does locally in Canton
Okay.
who prescribes that. Are they amenable to?
Does their first initial of their last name begin with a V?
I don't know.
Okay. If not, I'd be happy to go visit them and share the info with them.
So,
But there is, the one I'm referring to has the information in their possession.
someone whose last name starts with V?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but Dr. Varachu and his nurse practitioner spouse has the info. I don't know exactly if they've used it in their practice yet, but we had a nice discussion because one of the mental health articles in your binder is very indicative of pediatric applications. So,
And do they take them in correlation with Adderall, or do they stop the Adderall and start that?
excellent question. Mental health in particular titrations are generally a little different than something for Crohn's or IBS. It's generally a twice-a-day dosing, so you're going to see that evening dose still that probably is going to taper up from 0.5 milligram, probably going to start at 0.5 milligram and work your way up to 4.5, and maybe stop somewhere along the line. But then there'll be a morning dose of about 1 milligram that would be added, and you would stay on your Adderall medication and then reevaluate as you progress and see if that dose could be back down.
Because sometimes the Adderall just doesn't, it's hit or miss.
Well, and depending, you know, as the kids age and you get more hormones going on, you've got all kinds of other variables that change.
Only 6.
Okay, but good questions.
Oh, I don't want to monopolize.
No, you're fine.
I have several. I've had peripheral neuropathy here in my feet and, you know, halfway up my shin for probably 15 or more years. I've been fortunate that I've not become what I think addicted, but I take 100 milligrams of tramadol and 600 milligrams of gabapentin twice a day. And, you know, some days I keep on thinking if I were addicted, you know, regardless of whether I was feeling pain or not, I would want that, you know, that tramadol.
Yeah.
Even though it's the lowest addictive one, I think, on that schedule. But, you know, so I'm having a good day and my legs aren't bothering me. Sometimes it'll be like 3 hours past and I'll go, oh, now you know, that's usually what generates it.
Yeah.
I would love to get off that because, I mean, trying to get tramadol is, even then, I mean, they look at you like you're an addict or something, and, oh, it's a day too early for you to get that prescription.
I know, and it's, you know, I will say that we struggle with those things on a daily basis because the state's gotten so ridiculous. You know, not to change your subject, but I'll come right back, but, you know, a couple, 5, 8, 10 years ago, Medicare graded the hospital ERs based on exit polls from patients that went there. So if the patient went and the doctor didn't give them something for pain and they left with pain, they got dinged.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've had some questionable physicians writing things too much, but we've had some systems that led to the problem that weren't really anyone's fault. It was a different kind of feedback loop. But
Is
this-
there a preferred protocol to get off the tramadol, gabapentin? Now here, in my particular case, would be trying the CBD be the first order of defense, or the low-dose naltrexone?
I would honestly say you could go either. I would tell you that in all honesty, that probably the low-dose naltrexone, provided you can get your doctor educated or whatnot, would be more cost-effective for you. I mean, I think that if you got one of the CBD salves and put it on, I would like to think you'd have benefit in about 20 minutes, but it's $100, give or take, okay? It's not cheap. So the LDN is very affordable. Depending on your dose and your therapy and your thing, you're looking from anywhere from like 35 to 45 bucks a month on average. Maybe your insurance covers it, maybe it doesn't.
Is that out of pocket, or is that with?
That would be cash.
Okay.
So we have some insurances that cover some that don't cover it at all. It depends on your plan. So I'll tell you that then it's going to be out of pocket.
It's going to be out of pocket.
Yeah.
For all of them,
Yeah, Medicare has taken the stance that they don't care about compounded medications. And I didn't really do a good job on touching on it, but we do have an accredited compounding lab in New Philly that we do non-sterile medications. Does anybody have HBO in here? Good. There was a ridiculous story parody done earlier this week, which really wasn't fair, but we are able to customize the dose for the LDN in whatever you might need based on your doctor's idea. So we talked about, I think you said you started at 0.5 milligram and worked your way up. There are actually protocols out there. If you think of 1 milligram as 1,000 micrograms, there are protocols out there for pain that start at 1 microgram. So we can make doses from 1 microgram to whatever the doctor would want you to try. So it's kind of an interesting amalgam. But the neat thing is when Linda got started in the UK, she had to take a 50 milligram tablet and take the razor blade and chop it up and try to make it into smaller doses and make it consistent. And that was, you can imagine, a challenge. Sometimes they make a liquid, but then you have stability issues. So generally we see capsules as the preferred method. So capsules out of pocket, you know, on average, I'm gonna say 40, 45 bucks a month, give or take. I don't know, if you go to Starbucks every day, it's less than a cup of coffee. But the good thing is it's not 4 or 5 bucks a pill like some of this crazy stuff is.
Now, you said your pharmacy compounding one is down here.
Mm-hmm.
What about your one on Tusk?
All of our stores are under common ownership, and the Board of Pharmacy allows us to use them as pickup stations. So you could get it in Louisville or Minerva or Canton. We'd make it here and fill the order here, but you could pick it up there, or we can mail it to you. So.
What gastroenterologists do you know that are amenable to LDN?
I would again say the one you're seeing, and given what you told me.
My daughter sees the GI.
Okay, given what you told me before when you guys first came in, if you want when we're done, I can talk to you and I can conveniently visit them before your appointment next week if they don't already know.
But you know, you have a rough idea if we give you a name whether he or she would say they're not. Or
I can tell you whether or not we're currently getting orders from them for LDN. Yes, but that also doesn't mean that maybe they haven't been exposed to it. But maybe we could talk and leave them some info and see if we could start a conversation. So, and I think really, you know, there's a study in your binder that'd be like, you know, doc. You came here, we learned about this. You can just give them the binder because you could say, hey, look at this, I feel strong about this, read more about it, ask questions, start the discussion. I think, you know, the good thing is it's a low side effect profile. It's not very costly. And worst thing that can happen, my Jeeps, sorry. The worst thing that can happen is it won't work. So, but 84% chance, not bad.
they're different. if a doctor was amenable to prescribing it, would he or she have to call your pharmacy to get a recommendation as to, okay, my patient is suffering from, whatever grade ulcerative colitis? And is there a typical, milligram startage?
Yeah.
Or if the patient's got the peripheral neuropathy, is there another protocol? I mean.
Yes. So there is a sample prescription in the left-hand side of your binder, so that's a place to start. If they want to talk, I would say 9 times out of 10, as long as you're not dealing with chronic pain all along the lines of someone taking an opioid like a hydrocodone or an oxycodone, it could probably the best place to start is the 0.5 milligram, and what we would recommend probably would be to start there for 2 weeks and then increase it to 1 milligram for 2 weeks. And sometimes we gotta go a little slower, but generally if you go 2 weeks and up it by 0.5 milligram, and then you follow your symptom profile and see how you do, maybe you'll make it to 4.5, maybe you won't. It depends.
So if you go over, then you'll start to decompensate as far as.
Yes, would you agree?
Yeah.
So, generally what I'm being told by patient feedback is I woke up today and I started my new dose and I felt like trash after I took it, later on in the day. So, next day, that's your key, whether you track it in the app or whatnot, you could back down on the dose and continue on. Sometimes I hear them doing the washout period like you say, but anymore I hear just people backing down on the dose and then kind of moving along and seeing how it goes. So, because what we would do is we would give you a combination of capsule strengths. So we'd give you like 1 milligram and 0.5 milligram so that you could kind of tinker on your own, and in that way you could find out where you might fall based on what you feel like your symptom profile is the best.
But
So.
because of the low side effects of the slow dose with the LDN, do you think typically a person, it's a good idea for me to get off the tramadol and another gas?
Well, I wouldn't say don't torture yourself, okay? You can stay on it. It's not gonna be a problem, okay? You can stay on that while you get going along, and as you feel better, maybe you reduce the dose of your
But
tramadol.
it's a good idea to just, if this works, this is a much better alternative.
Well, it's certainly not, there's no addiction potential. You don't have to worry about horrible things of people breaking into your house and stealing it, and it's, unfortunately you mentioned we are in a society now where anybody who's in pain and taking a medication that's a narcotic is almost singled out, which is is really sad. But we've just all been hammered on by all these different agencies to solve this problem. I really honestly believe that's why we have so many patients that are moving back to heroin, because they can't get the narcotics like they used to. They are not out there. You can't buy Sudafed anymore hardly. So they're not making methamphetamine, they went to heroin because it's easy. So, my opinion, but doesn't mean it's right, but it's kind of scary. But yeah, if you would want to be able to remove that type of pain treatment from your, and with that, you might sleep better because those medications do affect your REM cycle. And your REM cycle is when you make your endorphins at night, which are those anti-inflammatory components. And you wouldn't have to worry about being impaired for driving or climbing stairs or, doing whatever. Not that it does at that dose, but you never know. So, other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Do pain management doctors, any of them use the LDN?
I can tell you that everyone in town has been educated, whether or not they are adopting. I will tell you that there is really good research. There's been some conversations with Altman Pain Management, Mercy Pain Management, Union Hospital Pain Management. I don't have any of those doctors right now sending orders for LDN for their patients, but I really think that in this environment, they have a lot to gain too, because if they're trying to treat pain and they don't want to use narcotics, it's a natural. It just takes a little bit more tinkering, and I think some of them are so overwhelmed and so busy because no family practitioner anymore wants to write for a narcotic. They're like, go to pain management. So these poor people are overwhelmed by patients that are suffering, and you get 8 minutes instead of 12 minutes with them. But again, it's a conversation that we're actively trying to have and to raise the awareness. And I think that I really believe that in the near future, there will be more pain management clinics doing that. So,
Has there been any studies with this naltrexone for small fiber neuropathy?
small fiber neuropathy, I can look for you and see.
Okay.
There are neuropathy studies. So whether it be as a result of diabetic neuropathy or that CRPS is a special subset of neuropathy. So small fiber is a good question, and I can do some looking, or else I can put my buddy from Yale on it and see.
Okay.
So,
Because I'm not a diabetic or anything, they're
Uh-huh.
saying it's idiopathic, and they have me on gabapentin.
okay. I mean, I've got another patient who's got rheumatoid arthritis and neuropathy, and he doesn't have diabetes. So he just started, and he said in his first week he's 20% better. And I don't agree with where the doctor started him on his dose, but that's only from my feedback that I've had from other patients. So,
And I would say, you know, the doctor that prescribed it to me is actually OBGYN, so he wasn't even a family doctor, and somehow he became my thyroid doctor.
yeah.
So
And thyroid's hard.
it's
I
really
mean, it's something that if you have a thyroid condition, it is not an easy condition. And especially like you already said, you're not only dealing with diet potential, but stress level potential, and there's so many factors. Hormone balancing, it's complicated. So, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. I encourage you to take a copy of that NPR article if you want to read more. And there's copies of our invite sheets for next month. If you want to take a physical, that'd be great. You guys were really good kids. Thanks for letting Mom come. The story was good.
They're tired.
So, appreciate it. So.